Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Sustainable Library. This week we're talking about green traveling, and today specifically I want to talk to you about a concept called slow traveling. So I don't know if you've heard of it before, but I want to explain to you guys what I think slow traveling is and why I think it's so important for us to embrace slow traveling, especially during this time where we're coming out of lockdowns all over the world and we haven't been able to travel. Maybe this is the time for us to rethink how we travel. So what is slow traveling? Slow traveling can be defined as taking your time to get to a destination. So basically, it's not taking the quickest or easiest route to get to your destination, but making your travel part of your journey. So there's a saying that goes, getting to your destination is half of your journey. And that to me is so true when it comes to traveling. So currently, we are coming out of some places here in the UK up to 3 months of lockdown, if not more, in other parts of the world. And still, even though we're coming out of lockdown, most of us are not allowed to travel. And we've seen how the impact that the less traveling has had on the environment. Amazing stories of, our carbon emissions falling, of clean air, and that's all because people are traveling less and they're staying home more. But here in Europe, it is also time for summer. So we're just about going into summer and it's the busiest travel season. From experience, I know that basically all flights in Europe, over and across Europe get overbooked, and you will always be delayed because there are just so many planes in the air. And apparently how it works is that they can only have a certain number of planes in the airspace over certain countries, and if that's full, then a plane gets delayed. So we just end up being frustrated, we end up being late, and it's just really irritating. And that's basically because we choose the easiest, quickest, cheapest way to get to our destination. And that's the complete opposite of what slow traveling is. I am, however, also aware that for most of us, our traveling time is limited. We only get a certain amount of days of leave a year, and we only have a certain budget. So we want to make the most of it. And there's this idea that, we want to get to the place as quickly as possible because we want to do things once we're there. But part of the concept of slow traveling is making the journey, getting to your destination, part of your travel. So for example, if you decide to rather take the train from one destination to another, that can be part of your travel plans. So when I was still in school and I came to Europe with my parents, we decided to take the train from Switzerland to Germany. And basically we went over the Alps, and it was the most amazing experience because I got to see snow for the first time in my life. It was a very hot winter, so it didn't snow anywhere else in Europe, but we were so high up, I actually got to see snow. So in that way, we chose to spend a whole day traveling, but it became part of our journey, it became part of our trip. And that is one of the great things about slow traveling. Another example is when my husband and I came to live in the UK, our first trip out of the UK was to Ireland, and we decided to take the ferry. It was my first time being on a ship or a boat that large, and it was an incredible experience. And once again, it was part of the journey. Yes, it took us longer to get there, but we made the decision because we could get a different experience out of it rather than just flying with the plane. slow traveling also has an amazing effect on the environment. So if you opt to rather, when you're in Europe, for example, to rather take the train from England to France over taking a plane, you will cut out on those emissions. Also, very interestingly, when you actually take the Eurostar, it'll tell you how many emissions, carbon emissions, you're actually saving by taking the train. And as long as you book those long in advance, you can get them for so much cheaper than a flight would have been. So you're cutting down on emissions. At the same time, if, for example, you're short on time and you maybe need to work while you're traveling, you can actually do that while you're on a train, for example. So that's another plus about it. At the same time, slow travel means less waste because you are not getting on a plane where you can't take your own food, you can't take your own utensils, things are wrapped in plastic, and it's just waste, waste, waste. You can actually make your own food beforehand, and you can take your own utensils, and you can make sure that you don't create any waste. Another great thing about slow traveling is that you can actually support more local and small businesses by doing it. Because your journey is taking slightly longer, it might stop in more places. So, for example, if you decide to rather take a road trip down from, if you live in South Africa, from Gauteng down to the Cape, that means you can stop in small towns along the way and you can support those local businesses. Sure, driving does also emit carbon emissions, but if you are a couple of people who club together and you make a whole trip out of it, then in that way you can still save on the individual carbon emissions, which is also a very important thing to keep in mind. Another part of slow traveling is to travel more locally. So this is something that South Africans are very, very good at. And on the one side, it's because South Africa is a country with amazing, diverse places, and you have everything from mountains to the desert to the oceans. But one thing that I've experienced here in the UK is that not enough people who live in the UK travel in the UK. It's an amazing country, and usually because it's so easy to travel for people from Europe, you just kind of want to go all over the place. But for us, for example, it's a lot more difficult because we have visa restrictions. We know that we can't do that. So for us, traveling locally has been such an amazing experience because there are so many things you can do here as well. You can go hiking, you can go camping, you can still go to the beach, even though it's slightly colder, yes, I'll admit. But it's important to realize that the place where you stay, or the country that you stay in, also has amazing things that you can experience and that you can go and visit. And in that way, once again, you're cutting down on emissions and you're supporting your own local economy. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope that this video has inspired you to think a bit more about slow traveling, especially now as we're coming out of lockdowns all over the world, but also after that, when things return to normal. Are we going to decide to actually just continue our traveling habits and continue to zoom all over the world on planes, but still complain that, the world is heating up and there's too much carbon emissions? Or are we going to make the decision to slow down, to visit more local places, to plan our trips better, and to make our whole travel part of our journey, part of our trip? If you would like to know anything more about slow traveling and green traveling in general, please visit my website, thesustainablelibrary.com. I'll link it down below in the description, and go and read up a bit more about, the effect of traveling on the environment and what choices you can make to travel more sustainably. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, let's all live sustainably.